Okay, so to make the plane, I'm going to use this piece of spruce. It's like a cut off from a 2x4 piece of spruce. So it's not very expensive material, but really easy to find, really cheap, obviously, like I just said. And it's pretty soft, so it should make it really easy to get all the angles into that I need. And the first thing I'm going to have to do is lay out the angles for where the blade, this is the blade I'm going to be using, where that's going to lay in the body of the hand plane. And this blade is a Wood River shoulder plane blade that I bought just because I don't really have the expertise to make a hand plane blade on my own. And I'll talk about that later after I make the plane, on how that kind of gets into the whole mystification of production. So that might be a point I have to concede, is making the blade itself. So here is the 45-degree angle drawn onto the piece of wood I'm going to use, and that angle is just going to be the angle that this blade sits at. So it's like the cutting angle, basically. And then next I need to cut an angle out of this piece of wood right here, and it's going to be a ratio of 1 inch to every 4.5 inches, and that is going to be the wedge that holds the blade in place a little bit later on. But I need to cut it out right now so I can use that as a template to draw the next angle, so I can get this thing done and then cut it out. Alright, and here is the finished wedge. Like I said, the ratio is 4.5 inches for every 1 inch. So it rises an inch for every 4.5 inches of length. And this is going to be the template for the angle that goes on top of this. And also this will be the final wedge. Obviously, this is the correct angle and everything, but I'll change it a little bit later so it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Alright, so now I've laid out the additional angle for the wedge, and I've also counted the width of the blade in that. And then you can't really see it there, it's kind of really rough looking, but right there's a knife mark, and that goes all the way around the top as well. And it's an inch deep as well, because that's how wide the blade needs to be when it's set in there. And I've marked it out with a knife. Now I'm going to go in with a chisel and just put like a little trough to set my saw in, so then I can cut an inch deep into every side. Then after I cut that inch deep into all of it, I'll go in. Alright, so now I've cut the inside of the body of the plane out. You can see it's still kind of rough back there, but that won't really be a problem. I clean it out later if I really want to, but it shouldn't really matter, to be honest. This is the 45-degree angle of the bed of the blade. That's where that's going to sit. And then the wedge will kind of wedge it in there. And then, as you can see right there, I've kind of cut the nose of the wedge off, and I've cut a slight angle on it, so when the blade fits into this, it basically just has a place for the wood shavings to come off of. So I'll show you how that'll fit real quick. So we'll just slide in like that, and then this will go in there like that, and it'll get hammered in. So there's just a slight space there, and then basically like a little slide, so the wood shavings will catch on that and just come right off, instead of clogging up the plane and making it impossible to cut, basically. And then you see up there at the top, I've kind of drawn out a little angle, and I'm going to cut that out just so it's a little easier to pull the wedge out later on, and also just looks a little better than just, you know, a triangle. Alright, so here, as you can see, I cut out a little notch there, rounded it off on top a little bit just for the wedge. It's still a little rough, but like I said, for the body of the plane as well, if I want to, I can go in there and make it look a little bit better later, but really this is the best it really needs to be to function correctly. After it's finished, I'll probably, you know, clean it up so it just looks pretty, I guess, but other than that, beyond this, doesn't really serve any purpose. So this is pretty much finished as far as the plane is considered. This is done. That is a rebate plane. You know, I can put handles on it later, make it look better. But just for the sake of convenience, I am going to put a fence on the bottom, and that'll just make it a little bit easier to use. Okay, so to make the fence, I ripped this piece of pine on my bandsaw. It's probably about like 3/8 of an inch, looks like. So what I'm going to do is on either end, I'm just going to drill 2 holes about like right here, and then connect them by cutting a hole between them with like a coping saw. It's going to be like an oval, basically, like that. It's a really rough drawing. Obviously, I'm not going to use that for the final. But yeah, I'm going to do that one side and the other. This is a little bit longer than the plane itself. And there's going to be a screw on either side going through and connecting with a washer into the body of the plane. And basically with the screw, it'll just be able to slide through that oval, so the fence will be adjustable, so I can take off, I can cut a different thickness anytime I want. Alright, as you can see, the fence is now attached. Those are the 2 brass screws and washers I was talking about earlier, so it just slides. And right now it's open at like the maximum width, which is about 3/4 of an inch, which is pretty much all I'll ever need. And here's the plane all together. So I'll probably round the back over and put a little divot in the front so I can put my thumb in, make it a little bit easier to move around on. But this is pretty much finished. Anything else I do to it is pretty much purely for aesthetics and just comfort, really, but it works perfectly fine. Okay, so here is the finished plane. Here's the fence that I attached to that I was talking about. You can see there's 2 slots in there, and there's 2 brass screws with washers, so it just slides up and down. The maximum opening for it is 3/4 of an inch, which is really all I'll ever need to use, so that's perfectly fine. And this is done. So anything I do from this point on is pretty much just for comfort or just for aesthetics, really. I'll probably round over the end just so it's a little bit more comfortable in my hand. Put a little hole for my thumb up here, maybe. I'm not really sure. Just make it a little bit easier to use. But yeah, this is all done. As you can see, this is a finished rabbet plane. And then I tested it out, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's a ridge right there. That is a rabbet right there. That's pretty much all that plane is used for. It's just to cut little troughs on the end of boards, just like that. And it's just a certain type of joint. So if you can imagine this going, halfway down this board, and then another board basically slide into that hole, and that's what a rabbet is used for. That is pretty much the entire usage of this plane. So might need to sharpen the blade a little bit since I just took it out of the box, but other than that, it is done. Okay, so the entire purpose of the video was to get into the idea of the mystification of production and the mystification of commodities, and I just wanted to kind of talk about this just because of a natural desire to better understand the world in which I live, and like the things I come in contact with every day, things that are typically mass produced, so I don't really see like how they're made, and I don't really understand where they come from. Basically, that's where the idea of this video came from. And the idea of the mystification of production and the mystification of commodities is something that is expanded upon in Max Horkheimer's writing Traditional and Critical Theory. In this, he writes about the idea that commodities are mystified, and the production of them is basically a mystery. And because of that, we approach commodities in an almost religious way, because we really don't understand a lot about the process in which things are produced and even the final product, because we don't understand the process. So we approach things religiously because it's kind of the same way we approach God. We don't really understand where God comes from. We don't understand a lot about him, so it kind of translates over to commodities. And in a paper written by Dino Faluga, who is a professor in critical theory at the University of Purdue, he says that since the people who create the commodities are not seen, and the products that they have created are exchanged for money, it allows us to completely detach another person's labor from the final product that they created, helping lead to it finally being approached religiously. So Professor Faluga also says that labor is now incarnated in paper money rather than the actual product. So people don't really see like a table that is produced and connect that with someone that has actually produced it. Like we don't connect, like we don't see a table and think about the factory worker of the produce that. We connect it more so to the money that was paid for it, and that is a big factor in the mystification of products. And he kind of finishes his essay by talking about how in feudal society this wasn't really a problem because exchanges of labor and exchanges of products weren't really at all like a monetary exchange, but it was more so like a social interaction. So there was like serfs and like blacksmiths and people in different class levels that would exchange labor and goods rather than doing it like through money and like trading a good for like something that represented the economy or like paper money or precious metals or anything like that. So back in feudal society, this wasn't a problem. This is a problem that is inherent to capitalism and is something that is relatively like new to the world, I guess. And also in a research paper written by Elmer Flatshirt, who is a professor at the University of Vienna in Austria, he talks about how people are detached from their labor by saying the other is like a whisper who is always doomed to remain unheard, and in that he's talking about the laborer. He's doomed to remain unheard. Like he's detached from his labor. People don't attribute what he has produced to the actual labor. They attribute it to the monetary value of it. So like the whole point of me making the hand plane was to try and better understand at least one product that is in my possession, like one thing that I have. I would like to at least know entirely where it's come from. So that was why I made this plane, because I just wanted to have like 100% realization of something, because even if there's something else that I've created, most likely I don't understand everything about it. So ultimately this project was just to break down like the mystery barrier basically. So ultimately I guess I could say like this project was pretty much a failure. I kind of hypothesized in the first place that it might be a failure, and I was somewhat correct. So the problem with this project was like as I talked about earlier on in the video, I had to concede the point, like I bought the blade for the hand plane. I don't have the capability to make a hand plane blade. I don't have the materials to make a blade. I don't have like the tools to do so, and I don't have the knowledge at all either. So that was something I had to go out and purchase. So right off the start, there was a problem with the project because I don't know where the hand plane blade came from. I don't know how it's produced. So automatically, that is mystified. Like there's a big problem with me, just buying the blade right off the bat. I'm already falling into the trap that capitalism has provided in the mystification of commodities. While I'm trying to like demystify a product, I immediately fall into that. So that's a problem, obviously. Another problem is I didn't cut down the tree that the lumber came from. I bought a 2x4 from a hardware store. So the wood basically has been shrouded in this mystery, not nearly to the same extent that the blade, because wood is still natural. So had I gone out and cut a tree down, the end result would have been the same as what I bought from the store. So it's not as big of a problem as the blade was, because obviously the blade, it's not just a pile of iron ore, it's a steel blade, so that's a much bigger problem. Then another thing that's a relatively large problem is the fact that I didn't make any of my own tools that I used on this project. All of those tools were purchased elsewhere, and they were things that I don't know how they were produced, and I don't really know anything about the materials. So it's the same problem with the blade, really. It's something in that trap of, basically these are already commodities that have been mystified. So like the hand plane that I used to, like square up the board, that's a mystery to me where that came from. Like I already approached that somewhat religiously because I don't understand how it's produced. I don't understand where it came from. I'm just like, oh, this thing's magic. Like it just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't connect it to the person that made it. So that's another big problem, just like the blade. And like just because of those reasons, I've kind of come to the conclusion that in the current system, where I don't, like when I pull out the hand plane, I think more about like, oh, I spent like $50 on this plane rather than somebody spent time making this. And considering my plane was mass produced, it's likely that one specific person didn't really put a lot of labor into it. It was probably just like a lot of machines and multiple people doing menial tasks. So that kind of makes me think
that this, in the current system at least, this idea of like commodity mystification and like the mystery that shrouds pretty much everything we come in contact with is pretty much inescapable, because I'll never entirely know where all these things come from unless obviously like uh, Professor Faluga said earlier, like we live in a feudal society where me trading with somebody to get the tools to make this, even though I don't understand entirely where it came from, I understand the labor that was put into it, and I understand the person that made it because it's like a social interaction. Like I go to the blacksmith and I get what he's made basically. So I better understand the product because I better understand the person who created it and the labor that went into it. But like I said, in this current system, that doesn't really happen because I'll go to a retail store and buy something, but I don't really go to the person that produced it. So my ultimate conclusion is that in the system that we currently live, which is capitalism, this idea of commodity mystification is totally inescapable, and it's not really something that we're going to escape. Even if you do what I did and make your entirely own product, you're still basically going to be screwed, I guess, by the system. So there you go.